Welcome to Bridging Two Worlds podcast with me, your host, George the Medium. We will cover all things spiritual, psychic, healing, aliens, paranormal, and more. The aim of this podcast is to stand out from the rest in telling the truth, coming at these topics from a personal angle and discussing many aspects that people don't speak of or know of in these particular fields. Enjoy and welcome. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bridging Two Worlds podcast with me, your host, George the Medium. Thank you, it's been a minute. I know you've all wondered, there's been questions where we've been at. And I was taking a hiatus. I was rebranding some stuff, changing some things up. But I've been planning secretly in the background with all these wonderful hosts. And this one is going to be the one where we kick us off. I have a person who I absolutely respect 100,000% because this lady has paved the way for many, many mediums and actually knows what mediumship is really all about and speaks about it in the most authentic and beautiful way. Please welcome Lisa Williams. Lisa, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely, George. Thank you for having me. Honestly, I love what you're doing. So
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. So we met in Edinburgh last year. Can't believe it. It was already a year ago. And so I appeared at this workshop and my partner drops me off in the morning and he's like, okay, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, are you going to tell people that you work as a medium? And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know. So then Lisa goes round the class and gets to know everybody and writes down what they hope for the weekend. And I said, I want a reset. And your response was, oh, okay. So what is that like when you have a mixed group like that? Like that's probably something that I think is quite interesting when you have a mixed group of people coming together who some people know how you work, some people don't. What's that approach like when you want to get to know these people and pull everything you can out of them?
So I think honestly, when it comes to any form of reading, any form of class, anything, it is trust. So when you said I want a reset, and I remember that moment, I'm like, okay, so what are we resetting from? That was where my mind went. And because we had everyone from beginners all the way through to really advanced people, I wanted to find a gauge where they're at. So I have to listen. And so it's about why are you trusting me? And so when I heard that, I heard you want to reset, so you think that I have the ability to give you the tools. And I always go back into the space of what Louise Hay said to me when I was reading her book, You Can Heal Your Life. And she said, I said, Louise, your book saved my life. She said, no, darling, I just gave you the tools. You had to do them. And I look at it from that way. So first of all, I have to gain your trust as well as you have to kind of see how I work and I have to see how you work. But really, when I go into a classroom, I take it all at a space of, okay, so now you want this person wants this, and then I mush it together because ultimately what I'm going to teach you just for a beginner's point, you're going to learn anyway. And you'll be like, oh, wow, I never saw it as that. And I always think it's really important for us advanced people to go back to basics and to really hone in our basic skills constantly, actually. In fact, I did it yesterday in a reading I was actually doing myself. Because if I skip the basic skills, what I'm doing is I'm trying to drive the car without starting it.
Yeah.
And so when I see a classroom of a variety of different people, I go, now's my opportunity to deep dive into the real stuff. And I love it. I love it.
I kind of jumped forward a little bit because I asked that question purely as a personal thing because it was such a wonderful thing. I got to watch you demonstrate the night before, and I think that's really important for people that are training is to come and see how that medium works because then we have a kind of understanding of that. So I know I kind of skipped forward purely for a selfish thing because I really wanted to know what the approach would be for that. Because for me, it's like that. I've got to sit back and think, I've got like an old lady of 66 years of age here and a young girl at 19. And how am I going to get these two worlds to meet? These two worlds who don't know each other's history or generational background. So anyway, let's wind back to Lisa. So I'm going to tell you how I found out who Lisa Williams is. And listen, Lisa's not old by any means and not much older than me. But I remember sitting with my mum, teenage George, watching your TV show. And so when I was like, I said to my mum last night on FaceTime, I was like, I've got my podcast from Lisa Williams. And she's like, okay, my mum's so forgetful, blonde like me. And so I send a picture of you back then with your short hair. And she's like, oh my God, no, you're not. So that's probably why she phoned just
Oh,
before I come on, because she's like, oh my God. So I was introduced to you by, I believe it might be Life Among the Dead. I think it was
that's
way
right.
back
Yes.
when. And then you have had Survival of the Soul and I Speak to Dead People. That's the three shows, if I'm correct, that you've done in the past.
So I Survival of the Soul and I Speak to Dead People are books, and then it
Oh, I
was
apologize.
no, it was Life Among the Dead, Voices from the Other Side, then Lisa Williams Live. So those are the three shows.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got the wrong information from
That's
Robert. I
okay.
apologize.
You can promote my books as much as you want, love.
Yeah, honestly. So can I let me sidestep there because I'm a really bad person to take things in with reading. Do you have audiobook situation?
So yeah, I mean, basically, so I have a whole array of books,
Yeah.
and
Did you do
so
audiobooks?
I didn't do the audiobooks,
Oh, I don't. And this is
and
again
I need
personal.
to.
You can tell a story. Like you let my grandfather. Like my grandfather could have sold a spoon from his drawer, and he tells a story about this spoon, for example. And the way that you speak to people and inspire people just by your conversation, it just is Lisa. Never mind Lisa the medium, but so yeah, audiobooks. I'd be like your first person,
You know, that's
100%.
funny because I have been thinking about putting the Survival of the Soul on the audiobook, and I just bought the rights back from my publisher a couple of years ago because I do need to get that finished.
Yeah, it's hard though when you're busy,
Oh yeah, I know. Tell me
isn't
about
it?
it.
So Life Among the Dead is the TV show, correct?
Yes, that was a TV show. And
So
it was a book as well. And it was a
oh,
book. So there you go. It was a book about my life too.
I found it fascinating because that was my George's introduction into what a medium was. Because I'd seen the
Yeah.
crack TV rubbish, right?
Yeah.
I'd seen the I'd never been to a spiritualist church. I'd never been to anything like that. 'Cause I was still a teenager. I had no idea I had a gift. It didn't happen to me till I was 18. My mum said I was weird as a kid until I was 9, and then it left. But when my
Yep.
great grandmother died 4 weeks of the day, there she was. So for me, though, winding back, I was like, that's my first insight into that world. What was that time like for you as working in the TV show? For anyone who
Um,
doesn't know.
so actually it was really interesting. Looking back, I mean, so I just left the UK. Now you got to remember that I was only leaving the UK for 6 weeks and then I was coming back. So I got told, hey, why don't you come out to LA for 6 weeks and you'll be back. You'll be back in time because I had a young boy at that time. I mean, now he's older, but he was 6. And he said, they said, you'll be back in time for school. So we went in the school holidays. And honestly, filming didn't start. And I was like, oh my God, it's like had to rush here and then nothing has happened. Like, what's going on? And then we started filming and it was so surreal to have a camera crew watching me. And the first day was a mess. The first day was an absolute, can I say it, shit show? It really
Yeah, of
was.
course you can. Oh, God,
All
yeah.
right. It was an absolute shit show. And I truly was like, I don't know whether I can do this. Having this camera in my face. I remember the first day I went to the toilet and I dropped my mic pack, dropped down the toilet. And I was like, oh God, it was just a mess. Right, George, listen, it was an absolute mess. And then I got into the studio and I actually had to say to them, listen, if you want to get the best out of me, do not stop my reading. Do not interrupt me. Let me just keep going. If you've got to change a camera thing, if you've got to do anything, do it. And I'm just going to keep doing my thing.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as I put that across into that experience, I put the client at ease, I put myself at ease, I didn't care. And it was amazing. So the actual whole experience of filming the TV shows and then everything else that came off it. And I remember driving up to this makeshift studio, where we were actually filming. I remember saying to the guy that was driving me, he said, what are you going to do after this comes back? I said, oh, I'll just go back to the UK and I'll just carry on with my 20 readings a week. And he went, you do realize your life is never going to be the same. And I went, no, it'd be fine. Well, obviously life changed dramatically. But it was such a real eye-opener. It was such an eye-opener. It gave me opportunities that I would never have dreamed of. And we ended up staying in America, but it was such an incredible time. And it was a hard time, don't get me wrong. 18-hour days, it was a lot. But it was incredible, and it was so much fun. And that's the part that people don't realize. They look at TV thinking, oh, all glitz, glamour, finance,
Yeah.
money, yada, 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 yada. But it was fun, you know? And I think if you can't have fun doing your work, then you shouldn't be doing it, because
What
you're a
was
long
the
time at work.
what was the what was the best experience for you out of all that whole production side of things, like dealing with that? What was fun, or what memory sticks
You
out?
know, I tell you what was really fun. The readings were great. You know, the readings were fabulous, but it was actually developing the story behind it. So obviously, I did the reading, and it was only when I watched the actual show that I would then see people going telling me their stories. I was like,
Yeah.
no way. So there is that element. But
Yeah.
I think the part of it that was so fun was the actual team. And people just see the face of Lisa Williams on the TV show, but they don't realize there's a whole TV team behind you, and you become a close knit family. So, my glam squad, you know, there was Stephanie and Jill, and then Sharon on the next series. So, my glam squad were like my people. We used to hang out. Then you got my driver, then you got the producers, then you got the camera guy, you got the sound guy. And these are just people that are everyday people doing their job, like I'm an everyday person doing my job, but we're all working for the same thing of changing people's lives, and each one of them have a job to do. And that, to me, I'm all about community, I'm all about family, and that to me changed everything. So I think, you know, you asking that question, if I think one of the biggest things is actually creating the community behind it.
I
Yeah.
think that's probably what people would not have expected you to say, because people would think, oh, TV career, or I met this celebrity, or I had all this money, or but actually to then hear the British girl in you doing, you know, it's family, it's community, it's
Mhm.
creating that network of togetherness and people that leave a lasting imprint. And
That's
I think that's important about the work that we do, is we don't realize the imprint that we leave on people's lives, because then when you bump into someone and they're like, oh my God, you read for me, and this, that, and the next thing, and we don't retain the memory. I mean, we read for too
nope.
many people, we're too busy. And that's no rudeness to them, but you know, forever in their hearts, they'll carry our time together.
That's
And of
right.
course, part of their lives will always be an imprint in our soul, like, you know, but our memory can't retain all that. And I think that's a wonderful thing to have, that you have not only created a TV show, but, you know, for me, like, I'm first person I've ever seen on TV do actual mediumship, you
Yep.
know, and like, I still remember you walking quietly into the studio on the TV thing and sitting down and having no clue who this person is in front of you. And then the story, like you say, would you do it again?
I would do it in a heartbeat. I would
Yeah.
absolutely do it in a heartbeat. And one thing I want to just share about that is um, the producer would not, if I went out of my room and I walked along the corridor and the client just walked out of their room and I walked past, and bearing in mind we were in like like a like a what we would call flats. Okay, so I was
Yeah.
in these flats, and so it could have been anyone. If our paths crossed, or if we turned up at the same time in the car park, we actually, if we met, we that reading was terminated, because he never wanted to have any form of question about it. And
Interesting.
it was so interesting. And one of my greatest parts, and I will tell you, all right, because you'll appreciate this. So I grew up watching, you know, Tony Stockwell, watching James Van Prague, you know, John Edward, Sylvia Brown, all of these people. I'll tell you two stories. It was really funny. Three stories. I never forget Tony and I working on stage, and I'm worried about working with him. And little did I know, he was worried about working with me. He was like, oh my God, I'm working with Lisa Williams. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm working with Tony Stockwell. So we had that moment. And then I was on Oprah with John Edward. And I never forget, I walked in and John walked in the room. I was having this like moment, and I'm sitting on stage. Oprah's sitting there. Johnny's right by the side of me. We're being interviewed by Oprah, and we're waiting. The cameras weren't rolling, and him and I were talking. I went, John, I just have to say this. I went, oh my god, I'm sitting next to John. What did you do? It was like I was like soaring at him. It was so funny. And then there's other stage. Oh, it's so funny where I'm on Larry King. I mean, these are big names.
Yeah.
I'm on Larry King with Shirley MacLaine and James Van Prague. And I was in the green room and I was talking, and James Van Prague came running down and went, oh my god, it's Lisa Williams. And I went, oh my god, it's James Van Prague. It was so funny. And now, I mean, I have a relationship with pretty much all of them, but it's so funny to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
And again, just realize they're normal people. So those are just my own human, like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I kind of met them. But truly, I think I would absolutely do filming again in a heartbeat. And there's always something that I'm working on. There's always a project that I'm working on. But I'm getting older. Let the young mediums come in. So
do you realize that you are some people's Oprah?
I didn't realize it until probably a few years ago, when somebody came up and she did a meet and greet line, and she just looked at me and she started to cry. And I said, what? And she said, you are my Oprah. And that's what she did. She used those words. And then I went, oh. And then a guy came across and he went, and I want you to know you're also my hall pass for my wife. And I went, wow. And I'm like, okay. So I've heard it, and it's funny because I don't see myself as that. And I think my work has kept me so humble, because this work, when you're dealing with death, you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with transition, you're dealing with life after death, you're dealing with things that aren't exactly accepted per se. You have to remain humble, and I think that's the only place to be. So when I do see people go, oh my god, my husband just goes, whatever, go and do your thing, go and be .com, he calls it. So
it's kind of then the Lisa the medium as opposed to just Lisa, like, and I think that's where my name came from. It was people was calling me, oh, that guy George the medium, because that wasn't the name I used then. And it was so funny because I was like, oh, I'm going to use that but then I always separate it to students that there is this natural part of you, George, and then the supernatural part, if you want to call it that, George the medium. And it's the easiest way to make, in layman's terms, to break it down. But I think when you look at the impact that we can have, so that weekend that we met, and I'm all about honesty on this podcast, really, really truthfully. And I want people to know this is the truth. When we met, and a whole group of people, there was no barrier from Lisa. There was no question it was off limits. There was no making you feel awkward that you scurried away and sat privately at lunch. You were with everybody, you were communicating, you're like, I'm going to go and call family and I'm coming back, and you're invested in conversation. And so I know that from many training that goes on around the world, there's this kind of separation from you and the teacher or whoever. And I want people to understand that that's not what you brought. And I don't know if you know that, by the way. There's other people out there that really put a barrier on, like, adding the talent, you're not, sit over there and, we can't sit together. There is a lot of that goes on.
Yeah. And I also want to put this into context. I get told all the time. And when I tell you all the time, I mean all the time, that I'm too accessible. And I can't be any other way. And so I have friends of mine that says, come on, Lisa, let's go and do this. I have my staff that want to put the boundaries up. I have the people who are organizing the class that want to put the boundaries up because they want to protect me. But what I think happens, and I'm just going to share this with you, is it becomes an isolated space. You become really alone in this space, and it's already a lonely space anyway. Doing this, and especially at the level that I'm at, I want to be involved with people. I want to get involved. I want to remember your struggles. I want to remember what it's like to get that basic connection. So I can remember, oh, I remember what that's like. Now let me take you back. Because it actually helps my teaching. And I think I'm a better teacher than I am a medium. And I will tell you, I'm a phenomenal teacher. And I admit that. But I look at it and I want to listen to you, because it's in those conversations that you all have at lunch and you all have over, coffee machines and going to the bathroom and everything else, that actually makes me get to understand you. It makes me get to see you. It gets me make to see the little idiosyncrasies that make us up as a human being. So therefore I can look at the childhood wounds that you've got, why people are acting out, why their ego has become so inflated, or why they're hiding away. And I start to see the little boy, the little girl in them, and go, right, now I can really see you. Now let me get in and teach you. And that changes everything.
What was your biggest teaching moment in your journey then? What was the biggest moment was your aha moment?
When I was teaching,
When you were learning, when you were developing
when
on
I
your
was
own
developing,
set. Yeah. What was your biggest teaching moment that you learned? Does
I've
that
learned.
make sense to you?
Yeah. I've learnt many. I mean, one, never to assume that, you've got a young girl in here and, oh my God, she's just got her grandparents. No, she had her
Mm,
husband, her mom, her dad, and her brother, her sister, I think it was. And I'm like, and you are 24,
yeah.
so not to make an assumption. I go by, and actually I'm going to grab this book, because I live by this book called The Four Agreements. And the Four Agreements is so important, and it's really about making sure that we are impeccable with our word. I'm just going to go through it. Don't take anything personally, and it's true. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. And the fourth agreement is you've got to stick to your word. Always do your best. Okay. And so I read this book. Oh my God. I just started my mediumship journey. So I don't know, a long time ago. And I read this book, and that was my learning. And I realized never to make assumptions, always do my best, show up,
Yep.
and really to get out of my own way, and not expect, and not to put pressure on myself. And I still go into that today, because there's a lot more pressure on myself to do a reading. People pay a lot of money to do a reading with me, and there's a lot of pressure, like, because they're watching TV shows, they're watching podcasts, they're seeing me out there. They're like, oh my God, look at her. And I say to them, listen, I'm a normal person. And if I don't get it right, it is what it is. So there's a lot of pressure on myself.
Yep.
So I go back to this, keep to my word. I'm not making assumptions. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do my best. And that's the most important thing. And I realized that for me, we've all got a gift, but it's the skill of delivering the message that
Yeah.
actually completely changes everything. And
I
that's
love
another
that.
thing. So I think there's many things here, George. It's not just one.
Yeah. Let's wind a little bit back on telling people what has been your journey. Like, so we know with TV show, we know you've written some books, but tell us, like, if you were to do a brushstroke of Lisa Williams or a poster, what would it say? Because there's some people that are going to listen that are really young, who have never seen anything online because they live in TikTok and nothing else, but they stumbled across this and they're like, oh, I really like that person. I love what she's saying. And they want to get to know who you are. So if you were to put it on a poster, what would it say?
So I think for me, I was a little girl in England, you know, seeing dead people. My grandmother was a well-known medium as well. She was very, very well known in our local area. Um, and I just, I guess, found my way in life. I wanted to be a singer. I could have had a record contract, but I wanted to be a singer. I was in the West End. I'd done a lot of stuff, and I fell into mediumship because I was a single mom, because I needed money, because I was struggling. And, I found that I could do readings. I found that I could just know stuff. So I just started to do readings. And before I knew it, I had a waiting list of 6 months. And I lost my job, would be still a single mom. And then next thing I know, so I said yes to an opportunity. And by saying yes to an opportunity, it brought me to America. And so always say yes. If I can give some advice to people, always say yes to opportunities as long as it feels in alignment with you. Don't say yes to an opportunity where you're selling your soul. Say yes to an opportunity where you feel I'm a little scared about. It's a little scary, because trust me, it was scary. One that you're excited about, but also that it's an alignment of what you do. And the rest, let life unfold. And that's what happened to me, is I let life unfold. And before I knew it, I was reading for a famous singer that then said, hey, come to LA. Before I knew it, I met the TV producer. Before I knew it, I was being flown over. And the rest is history.
And so Lisa Williams' training school is not just based in the States, it's online.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very apparent that when you go on your website, you can just look back and go, that's her baby. Like, you can tell that is your baby. The thing that you seem the most, just listen to you do lives and you go on and you share and you give readings for people, and it's just like that enthusiasm comes out, which, being honest, Lisa, we don't see a lot of. We don't see authentic enthusiasm around actually want to help the brand new little medium who doesn't know diddly squat find the best version of themselves to be able to help themselves, not only themselves, but others. And there was a guy in the class with us, and he'd never done anything. And I remember the way that you helped this guy. It was transformative for him. And he was a total geezer, and I'm so rubbish. I can't remember.
Yes.
Remember?
Uh-huh.
And he was thinking from a hangover. He was, still had alcohol on him. He was in this class, and he was like, not really sure why on earth he was here. I think I was the only other dude that was in the class. And he was just, and the guy got up, you encouraged him. And that was in that moment where I thought, oh, because you pulled out in him something. That guy gave a reading for somebody there, and the jaw was on the floor by the person. And this guy was shocked that he shit himself literally of I just done that. And so that's where, if anybody doesn't know, go to lisawilliams.com and actually look at the training side of things, and you will see that's the baby you birth. That's the.
It is.
And so let's look at the worries of the spiritual movement.
Okay. How long have we got?
We don't have that long.
Yeah. So the worries. Okay, so now we've got to look at the spiritual movement. Are we talking spiritualism? Are we talking mediumship? Or are we talking spirituality in general?
For me, the part that jumps into mind is the confines of the religion part and true, genuine, authentic mediumship.
Okay.
Or spirit, or your spiritual self, like whether it's mediumship or psychic worker.
Yes. So I think for the aid of your viewers and listeners, I think it's really important that we actually separate the two.
Yes.
So to give you some history, everyone, mediumship was based upon a religion that started off in America that was based upon modern day mediumship of 1848. That happened because there was a lot of rappings by Kate and Margaret Fox in Hydesville, which ironically I have a house near 2 hours away, and I've been there many times. And so therefore a religion of spiritualism was based, and that was based upon free thinkers. Now I actually live in the world's largest center for the religion of spiritualism in a place called Lilydale. So there is the religious organization of the spiritualism, which if somebody asks me, I'm going to use exactly the same words that one of the greatest spiritualists that actually is still living, Anne Gaiman said to me, I said, what is spiritualism to you? She said, well, darling, it's just Christianity with messages added on to the end. And I went, oh, fabulous. I love you.
That's
right.
so
It
right.
was so amazing. So there's a religion attached to it. And then you've got the mediums who are developing the mediumship without the religious context. So what is happening is, and this is the reason why SNU is important, and NSAC, you've got independent spiritualist churches. So this is the reason why people are going into church to learn the techniques of mediumship. But also people are coming to me to learn mediumship and other teachers without the religious aspects.
Yeah.
So I think my concern is, and I will talk about this all the time, and I don't mean any context from anyone, and I'm certainly not pointing fingers at any organization. I feel as though the religion part of it is very hindering to the mediumship. Because what happens is the mediumship in a religious point is put in a box. You have to stand this way, you have to speak this way, you have to wear these clothes, you cannot say this, you cannot say that, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I'm like, dude, you want a carbon copy of me? Just get a bloody robot, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me. And so I feel like my worry is that people are going to pull back the development of mediumship and the real healing part that mediumship can do, because it's how it was and how it should be, and this is how it's always been. Well, in reality, yes, it's how it's always been, but that started in 1848. We're now 2003. We're going into 2023, going into 2024. So let's move with the times. Let's look at the fact that there is a much more variety, much more gifted people, but they may not come in the same package as most.
Yeah.
They may not, if I may bring this up, you're tattooed, I'm tattooed.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, why should we be questioned for our gift because of what we choose to do with our own physical body?
Yes, exactly.
So that's my worry, that we are hindering those people who have got an incredible gift because they don't fit in the box. They don't fit in this box of what it should look like.
Yeah.
And, I almost came away from spiritualism, from mediumship, because of that. I was bullied and abused by, in a circumstance and a situation. It was all jealousy. But I realized that why do it? Why try to help? And in the end, I walked away from that situation. But it gets you down. So I am going to say to anybody that is wanting to study mediumship, wanting to develop, be yourself. Go be yourself. Sing somewhere over the rainbow from the rooftops in whatever multicolored shit you want to. Go and be yourself. If you want to be an artistic medium, go and do it. If you want to be if you want to do trance mediumship, go and do it. If you want to do automatic writing, go and do it. It may not be how it fits into someone else's box, but that's their problem for not opening their mind and seeing more of an expansive way.
So I'm going to probably tell you something. I don't know if you'll maybe have friends back home that will tell you that it's quite sad, because the majority of the long-standing churches around the UK are struggling for numbers. And I don't think it's a big surprise, but it's quite sad. You walk into somewhere
around the world. It's around the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I know a lot of people will probably know from going to more progressive places, centres and sanctuaries, somewhere like mine. But the thing is that these places used to pack 80, 90, 100, 200 people. And there's one that can seat about 200 people, and you're lucky if you put 6 on a Sunday. And
so, go on.
No, I was just going to say it, and it's so sad when the older generation are holding on to it because of the way it was for them 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You had Albert Best, and you had all these wonderful mediums who stood in Gordon Smith and all these people who helped the doors stay open, whatever. But also, like, I mean, I'll tell you one thing I like. Sorry, I'm jumping a little bit here, but Gordon Higginson on a recording said about someone asked him a question about what do you hope the future of mediumship to be? And he said, mediumship must progress into the modern day or the churches will die. And I thought, thank God someone who is held up in great regard by the religion side of it. And I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm just saying we need to look at it because we need to take all of the aspects, step back and go, what can we take? What's not working and what is working? Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's interesting because, spiritualism was a religion that had 8 million members at one point. And that is just in America. And so what we have done is people are realizing that it's not that anyone can develop this. And I love the fact that people are developing and they're finding their own way in it. But we're developing it in such a powerful, unique way. But we have to move with the times. And the reason why I truly believe that we are not moving with the times. And remember, I live in a place that is the world's largest center for spiritualist religion. The reason why the numbers are dropping is because they're not building mediumship as a, they're trying to keep it rooted into the religion, and people don't want religion, and because it's been tarnished by Catholicism and Christianity, and, because they've grown up with a variety of religious beliefs. Oh, and I shouldn't do that because the Bible says. Well, I think it's really about expanding people's awareness and realizing that spiritualism isn't spirituality, but as long as we're coming from a spiritual place, that there is a place for mediumship and there's a place for religion, because I'm a religious minister, or I'm a spiritualist minister. So there is definitely a place, and I'm very passionate about my ministerial work, and I'm very locked into it, and I love that part of it. But it is only a small percentage of what I do, because they're stuck. It's stuck in a way.
So if we use the famous quote that people use, that we're a spiritual being living a human experience, then is it not meant that we're meant to experience as much as we can from every side to then learn? I was interviewing Jackie Wright, who's the new president of the Spiritualist Master Union, and there's a quote that she said in the podcast, and it's something that has stuck. I asked the question is why do you think we as mediums, most people have illnesses and really bad backgrounds and things like that. Not most, but a lot of people who are mediums or whatever, they tend to be people who are unwell or, things like that. And she said, because the people who are the broken vessels, the light shines through them the best.
Oh, that's sweet. I like that.
I love that. I thought that's a really, really nice quote. And I often think about the broken people who walk through our doors into our lives for us to teach or to read for. But it's the ones that they trust in us to teach. And I look at these people, and they are from whatever background, and they have saved the money to do part of this class. And all they are there for is to help other people heal. And that's it. We are healers of our words. We are hopefully here to prove the existence of eternal life through the survival of physical death. And so from that, this random woman who has walked through my door, who you can tell doesn't have much, she's struggled, she's had life problems, whatever, she's maybe lost her son, and she ends up being here because she wants to help others. And then I think, do you know what? Then there is a reason, and this is where it annoys me with all this online hate, because then these assholes who don't have any understanding of anything, just cyber troll, and it can really affect people. I mean, you and I like that very thick skin now, like, oh, another person that I know how to block, whatever. But it's like looking at those people who put so much into it, then they get hurt. I kind of think my hope for the movement is that the word gets out there enough that people will not need to fight for it anymore, but it'll just become so accepted in life that we can have communication with the other side. I mean, my God, Congress are going in the States and talking about the UFOs in another dimension. And it's like, yeah, we know. You know, it's like,
Yeah, I know. Tell us something we don't already know.
exactly, exactly. So if I was to say, let's promote what's happening with Lisa, because I'm sure by this point, people are like, okay, what's going on? I want to stop this episode so I can go and look at this lady's website. What's going on? What's bubbling under the surface as well? Because that's interesting.
There's a lot of things that are bubbling under the surface. So I have 40 master teachers or 44 master teachers around the world. And so we're actually building this spiritual, we're now building the school in to bring in those teachers in. So we're really opening it up into a much more expansive space. But I'm also creating a directory where, well, it's a network of people where people can come and have readings. They can come to the directory and know that they can have a place where they can get a quality medium, because I train mediums, I certify them. So that's something else. But personally, in my world, I'm shifting gears. And I have always done a lot of healing. So through my mediumship, I've realized that I've also done a lot with people in transition, people in the dying space. And so what I'm now going into is a lot more healing, a lot more transitional care, a lot more helping people pass away.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
so I'm going into more of the healing. Let me look at where your life path is going. Let me understand, let me help you communicate with your loved ones. Let's go deep dive into the soul and look at your life's purpose. And then what I'm doing is I'm helping people with that healing modality, then bring them in. Some people aren't going to live, let's face it, two things we can't escape: death and taxes. But then, and then what we're doing is at that point, then I can take them into the transition state. So my aim is, one, to help people heal. And if they can't heal, is to help them die beautifully. And that's my main, that's what I want to know. And
Okay.
if I had to look at a legacy, what I wanted to leave, it was more, I want to be known to help people live in an energetically purposeful life, knowing that they have all the answers within and they can heal their own life, and they have the ability to die in the way that they want to die.
That's beautiful. So this might sound morbid to other people, but it's not to us. That should be a TV show. Like, could you imagine documenting that discovery of going in to help someone in the latter part who may be in end of life care, and being able to help them understand that who are people who are terrified to die, who are going to transition beautifully. I think the world needs to see that. I think there's a big thing where the world needs to see something like that. But I think it's a beautiful thing to then go away from, yeah, I'm still doing my readings, I'm still doing my teaching, but I've now created a system that's all looking after itself. Now I'm going to do what my soul's purpose is, So what, I know you mentioned your son.
Yep.
Is he gifted?
Oh, incredibly
Okay.
gifted.
Does he do anything with it?
So it's funny because he actually teaches mixed martial arts. And whenever he teaches a private session, or he brings, a new client on, he immediately asks them what's their astrology sign. And I'm like, okay. And he gets to understand them on a more deeper philosophical way. And I've seen my son in a very healing, beautiful space where I've been taking groups through healing journeys and healing spaces, and he will automatically get up and start healing. And I'm like, I don't think you're believing in any of this. And he's like, and he realizes, I think it's only been recently in the last year that he realizes that he has a gift and that he could use it if he wanted to.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think that he's starting to see that there's a much bigger space and a much bigger world out there that he could be part of.
And that's wonderful that he's helping people with his martial arts stuff. And then I wonder how much he's tapping in to what's going on.
All the time. He's constantly tapping in.
So here's an interesting question. I know you're newly married. Was last year, am I correct?
I was 4 years ago.
Oh my God, really?
4 years
Oh,
ago.
I apologize. Right. Okay.
No,
So here's my question, right? So when I met my partner 2.5 years ago, on Tinder, and so I couldn't put out there because I had been married, so my whole time of being married was the birth of online dating. So then meeting Andrew was weird, right? Because it was new and it was very different, and so on Tinder. And so when we're chatting, the conversation is what he asked me. He's like, "What is it you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm a grief counsellor," because I couldn't sit and talk to dead people. He would run. So what did you say? I mean, did your husband know who you were beforehand, or did you have
No.
to did you have to have that chat?
No, so it was funny because I actually met my husband through through a guy I was dating.
Oh,
So,
okay.
which was really interesting. So on Valentine's Day, my boyfriend at the time turned around and said, "We're going skiing." I went, "Great." And he said, "Oh, and by the way, I've asked somebody else to come." And I went, "Why?" And he said, "Because he's alone. It's Saturday. We're training together." And I went, "Okay." So as it happened, that conversation had already been happened or had happened, and it wasn't through mine. And he's like, "So who are you again? What do you do?" And I went, "Oh, I speak to dead people. What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm a combat medic." So because he's in the army,
Yeah.
in the US Army. So I just said it so nonchalantly that he's like, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "Oh." And he was brought up very, very religious. His family were very religious, or they still are. And I think he got to know me as a person before he started to judge me. And we were friends. We were friends
Yeah.
for 9 months before anything ever happened. So
Right.
so I didn't really have to have that conversation. But truly, I mean, I've been in that dating situation where people say, "What do you do?" I've actually put it on. I've actually put it on my profile. I'm a
Yeah.
psychic medium. I had a TV show. I don't want anyone to kind of find stuff out and realize that, God,
Yeah.
because quite honestly, if they can't accept me for doing psychic mediumship, then I don't want them in my life.
True. Very true. Oh, I love that. That's a nice line. So to finish up, what's the best place to find everything is lisawilliams.com, which I put in the bottom. Is there
Yep.
anything that you would like people to know specifically about books and episodes and things like that? Anything that you want to share with people?
I would just say, come over. We have a whole soul tribe there. And what that soul tribe is it's really a community of like minded people. I give training sessions. We do astrology in there. We have journals. We have challenges. We have all sorts of other stuff. We do public demonstrations. So, I mean, it's a really nominal fee. I mean, it's like a Netflix subscription, seriously.
Yeah.
And you get all of this training package for you, and it's amazing. So I think that's probably the best place to start. If anyone's like looking for something, where do I go from here? That's probably the best place.
And when Lisa passes away, what's the hope of the legacy? What hope did you hope that your imprint on the world? What do you hope that will do, hopefully, for humanity and mankind at home?
I really feel, when I am not here, I want to be known for the fact that there is more than this, more than what we have in life. There is more than just this existence, and that we can heal our own wounds in so many different ways, and that we are responsible for how we choose to live.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking part. Thank you for your time. It has been a joy. And I love the fact that it was exactly what I hoped it would be, was just a conversation. And, you never know how these things are going to be.
No, you
But
don't.
I really appreciate it, honestly. Thank you. So to anybody that's listening, everything for Lisa is going to be linked down below. If you can't find anything, drop me a message and I'll get in touch. Stay tuned to the next episode of Bridging Two Worlds podcast with me, your host, George the Medium. Take care, be good to yourself, and be kind to one another, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.